Welcome to the Chronic Warriors podcast with Cassandra A. Campbell.
A platform to share,
Hear,
and cheer chronic illness warriors.
Just know that when you made your commitment to your partner, you took their whole selves.
To be able to have a bad day, to be able to say, do you know what, I can't cope no more.
I am a chronic warrior because every day I wake up and I'm so glad to still be here.
Welcome to another episode of the Chronic Warriors podcast. Today, I'll be speaking with Katie, who is a parent living with chronic conditions. Hi, Katie. Thanks for joining me. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. Thank you so much for having me.
You're most welcome. So let's kick off with you telling our listeners a little bit about yourself, what conditions you have, and anything else you'd like to share, really.
Great. So my name's Katie. I am 37 currently. One of the biggest things that comes to my mind when I start talking about what I have and where my body is, I think it's important to note it's kind of a double-edged sword. So I was an elite soccer player, a professional level soccer player, collegiate level soccer player. So my body has been through more trauma than the average human, in my mind at least, with the running. And I was a goalkeeper, so I was throwing myself on the ground. And I actually had a neck injury in 2003 that essentially ended my soccer career. Football, as you guys call it, which was very tough on my life. You know, I was very fit and very strong for a long time. But the other side of that is that my body has had, again, more trauma than most bodies. My joints, my muscles, I've had tears and all the things. So for so many years, I would chalk all of my symptoms up to it's because of soccer. You know, it's because I was so hard on my body for about 20 years. This is what you get when you do these things. But now I look back and I'm thinking, oh, that's why that pain was there, or that's why I was more sore than other people, or seemingly less fit than other people, because everything was more difficult for me and I just did not know it. I am still on my journey for my diagnosis. So right now, my official diagnoses are hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. I'm trying to get a POTS diagnosis. I'm in the middle of that right now. Hyperhidrosis is a big issue for me, which is what I'm learning is probably the mast cell activation syndrome, which I guess these three all go hand in hand.
Yes.
I've had fibromyalgia thrown around, chronic fatigue syndrome thrown around. It's just been crazy. I was not diagnosed until I was 35. Looking back, I've been having symptoms since I was born, but it took me 17 years of trial and error. I've been to every different doctor you can ever imagine. Eastern medicine, Western medicine, and finally in 2019, I was officially diagnosed with hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos.
Okay. So could you just explain for those who might not know what POTS and Mcats are?
Sure. So again, these are newer to me. So POTS is post-orthostatic tachycardia syndrome.
Yes.
And the MCAS is mast cell activation syndrome.
And what are your symptoms with those things?
So the biggest thing, I have had heart palpitations literally my entire life. I always thought of a heart palpitation as some sort of arrhythmia, like skipping a heartbeat or your heart feeling like it's stopping and starting. But my entire life, since I was a child, I have had severe heart palpitations just all the time. Like anytime I roll over in bed, go from sitting to standing, walking up just a couple steps, anytime you go into a quick energy or a change in position, my heart races, it pounds. It's just been since the last 2 years that it has really affected my everyday life, my everyday tasks, and been detrimental to my everyday life. My blood pressure spikes. I have hyperhidrosis, which is crazy amounts of sweating. I'm talking literally just sitting in a room, or if it's summertime or even in wintertime, and I just drip. I mean, rags. I have rags that I cover in sweat. I sweat my bed out. It had gotten so bad that I ruined my clothes. They smell like athletic equipment and I can't get them clean. My bra especially, I just ruin them. They have this smell. I've tried detergents and soaps and all the things. And the sweating has just, in the past year and a half, which I'm now getting treated for, is almost impossible to live with. Since I had my child, my body has just grown cysts everywhere all the time. They're benign, they've been tested. But now where my shirt and my top and my bra are, I have cysts. I mean, I'm talking just painful all the time, never go away, under my armpit, under my bra line, raw skin, just because it's wet. It sits wet essentially 24/7. So that's been very, very difficult. And the dizziness is there all the time, and the heart palpitations. Those are, and just being out of breath. So if I was to walk up a half a flight of steps, 6 or 7 steps, I have to stop. I get dizzy. It sounds like I'm 90 years old trying to walk up a flight of steps now.
Yeah. I know that feeling.
Yes. I mean, I feel like my body is just shutting down. My nervous system just wants to shut down all the time, or it's in panic mode or shutdown mode. It's just very uncomfortable. So
yeah, I can only imagine. I mean, I do get tiny little bits of those symptoms, you know, the dizziness. So I've got a little bit of an idea in regards to POTS, but thankfully I don't have POTS. I have been experiencing over the past, well, maybe from longer than I even realised, but more so I've noticed again over the past couple of years with Mcats symptoms. And as far as I'm aware, and please correct me because I'm still learning about all of this stuff myself, in regards to the Mcats mast cell activation syndrome, it's to do with the reactions of our receptors overreacting.
Yes, so I had just started seeing a fantastic doctor. I have my second appointment this Friday, and he just really put it in layman's terms for me. It made sense, and he is seeing that the Ehlers-Danlos, any type really, but especially the hypermobile and the POTS and the MCAS or MCAS, which POTS and MCAS are under the umbrella, I believe, of dysautonomia. He is like, we are seeing people that come in with the same things, these 3 things. And he said, what would happen to you if I were to put you in a room with a live lion, and shut the door, right? You would probably start sweating. You would probably start shaking. You would probably, headaches, had a lot of headaches. I've had some other things done. We can talk about that. You might get a headache. You might get a stomach ache. You know, you go into fight mode. So it's your sympathetic nervous system, which is the one that you have no control over: blinking, breathing, heartbeat, swallowing, all those things. He said, think of all of your veins in your body as highways. And normal people, all of these highways have gates that open and close based on fight or flight, you know, your needs at the time. He said, we're working on finding the gene. We think it's attached to those where those gates are. Essentially, your gates are open all the time and the hinges have flown off.
Right.
So essentially, we are living in a mode of fight all the time. So, and he's like, you were born with it that way. So you have been fighting subconsciously. Your body has been fighting since the moment you were born. It's why it takes so long to diagnose. You know, as a child, you're growing, you're changing. But when you fight for so many years, your body just starts to break down. And that's why symptoms may not come on until later in life, or, you know, things of that nature.
That is a really fantastic explanation, actually.
Yeah. I was like, this is great. I love you. When can I come back? You know?
Yeah, that's great. Because with me, when I'm talking about the MCAS symptoms, from when I was a child, I started to get these reactions, lumps, itching, swelling, and they just said, oh, it's urticaria, and they just left me. And that went on for years, to the point where I wanted to just rip my skin off. It was so bad. And then in my 20s, it came back again, and then it died down for years. And as I said, it's only the last couple of years it's come back again. But the doctor's sort of like, oh, well, we don't see any, there's nothing in your blood.
Yeah, you're normal.
Yeah, you know, and I spoke to a doctor who I know, who is hypermobile, and she said to me, 99% of people who have hypermobile EDS most certainly have MCAS.
Yep. And I considered myself, you know, since I've been learning the past few years, you know, I'm like, I don't know if I really have MCAS. I don't get rashes easily. I do have atrophic scarring, but my skin is very light. It is very see-through, but it's not fragile. I don't cut easily. I don't bruise very easily. You know, those classic symptoms that a lot of people have. And I'm like, I'm not anaphylactic. I'm not allergic really to anything. I do have asthma, so that's a big one. I am allergic to everything outside, but that's asthma. Many kids have it. And I was like, I don't know if I have this. And then I'm thinking in the past 3 years, I take a daily antihistamine because I start to itch. It's like a crawly itch. It just won't go away. That started within the past few years. And really the turning point for me was after giving birth to my son, which I've also known is very common. The joint pain, the body pain, the fatigue, the brain fog, that has always been a part of my symptoms. But the POTS, the Mcats, or I'm not sure how to say that ever.
Yeah, yes, it's fine.
The turning point, and with my joints as well, really was after I gave birth to my son, notably 100%, which is very common, so that I'm learning now.
Yes. And how was your pregnancy?
So I hurt. God help me, I hurt so bad. I mean, even my heels, like getting up in the morning, gosh, I was miserable. I was a miserable pregnant person. Because I was on a medication called Cymbalta at the time, which I had been using for about 3 years prior to getting pregnant. I had to stop taking that. That's a whole nother bag of tricks. I did cold turkey at that point. I continued on it after my pregnancy, and I actually just got off of it less than a year ago. And the withdrawal symptoms from that drug are horrendous. It was very hard. It took me about a full year to wean off of Cymbalta after about 10 years on it. So I stopped taking the Cymbalta, cold turkeyed when I was pregnant, essentially. My body just hurt. It was like a horrible flare day every day. My first trimester was normal. My blood pressure, everything, all the signs of pregnancy, everything was normal, which was great. I was just in a severe amount of pain all the time. I had some nausea, no vomiting, thank goodness. No real morning sickness, but I was nauseous a lot, but they have a drug for that, which took that away. My second trimester was my best. I had a good couple months because I gained a lot of weight in my first trimester. And then I actually ended up losing almost 10 pounds in my second trimester, which they were baffled by. But it's almost like my body just put it all on immediately and was like, save it for the baby. And then as I filled out, I didn't gain any weight and I actually lost a couple pounds because I did have my energy kind of came back in my second trimester. I was trying to walk, stay active and healthy, things like that. But once I hit 31 weeks, I was just the most uncomfortable person. I was like, I can't possibly get bigger. I kept getting bigger. At about 36 weeks, my blood pressure starting to creep up a little bit. Mind you, my last trimester was in the middle of summer. I have an August baby, so that never helps. I did end up having gestational hypertension towards the end of my pregnancy, and I was put on bed rest at 37 weeks. Essentially, anytime I'd stand up, my blood pressure would just skyrocket. I could feel it like pumping in through my fingers, through my toes. I could feel it. But if I was to lay down on my left side, it would go back to normal instantly. So he must have been laying on something or, somewhere in there. So then I was on bed rest for 2 weeks and he came a week early. I have read up on a lot of the problems that can happen, like rapid labor and things like that. My delivery was awful. I had the opposite. So I woke up one morning about 5 a.m., started feeling light contractions, maybe once every half an hour. I'd go back to sleep after I had one. And as soon as it was time, late enough in the morning, I called my doctor. They said, oh yeah, come on in, let's get you checked. And they were giving me all you're barely 2 centimeters dilated, you're facing, or I don't even know the terms anymore, but you're not going to have the baby now, but in the next 48 hours, he'll be here. Go home, rest. Okay, I said. So by noon that day, my contractions were getting very strong and they were about 5 to 7 minutes apart for about 6 or 7 hours. And they were horrible. I was in a lot of pain. I was trying to breathe and do all the things. And then I want to say by 9 p.m. that evening, my contractions were like 3 minutes apart, like boom, boom, boom. And I was exhausted. I said, I can't take it. Take me to the hospital. I get to the hospital and they're like, you need to go home. And I'm like, I'm not going home. Put me in triage. Sadly, I had a very terrible experiences with the triage nurses. First of all, I have a hard time getting needles in my veins. They roll over. So there's an EDS thing, right? So they roll over easy. They're hard to find.
Yes.
So I had these two ladies, I'm like sitting on the bed, like shaking because I've been having contractions now for almost 24 hours. And they're rolling my veins over and I'm screaming. I'm just like, just put it in my hand. I'm telling you, I've had surgery. Just put it in my hand. It'll be better. And they're like, this isn't even the hard part yet. You need to try to relax. And I'm like, you know, pregnant lady in labor, that's not what you say to them.
No.
So I sat there in triage, and my doctor at the time that was there was in surgery, so she couldn't come up to look at me, but the baby's heart rate was fine. The baby was not under any duress. So essentially I was there waiting, and I was just like, can you please admit me and, you know, help me out here? So I sat in triage for about 2 hours. Mind you, in triage, behind the curtains across the hall from me was another poor woman that I heard screaming every 5 minutes too. I was like, oh, we're here together, you know. And looking back on it, I remember thinking my left side of my stomach hurts. It hurts more, it hurts different than the other side. And I'm like, I knew my placenta was over there, but you know, I'd never had a child before. I just expected it to hurt, and that's what it was. And then as the doctor finally came in, it was probably about midnight. So I had been in labor from 5 a.m., August 6th, through midnight with about 12 hours of having contractions, 3 to 4 minutes apart. And I started just vomiting from the pain at that point. And the doctor comes in and she's like, will you admit her, please? And I'm just looking around like, are you kidding me? I've been sitting here for 2 hours waiting for that. So I'm sorry, it's a long story, but I finally get back into the room. And at this point, I am like, give me the drugs. I didn't want intravenous drugs. I was so against it. And I was like, please, God, just give me something. So they gave me the drugs, and I just immediately was still feeling the pain, but I felt like I had drank a pint of vodka. Boom, immediately hit me. And, you know, she looked at me and was looking down there, and she's like, well, you're only about 3.5, maybe 4 centimeters dilated. And I'm like, dear God. I was like, can you break my water? She said, that's a good idea. We're going to break your water, see if we can get this to speed up a little bit. So then they broke my water, and I started bleeding everywhere, which I didn't know. So I started bleeding. Again, the baby, though, the odd thing was the baby's heart rate was fine. He was showing no signs of distress. And she looks at me and she said, you know, the placenta could have detached. We don't know, which is common with EDS. It's not an emergency right now, but we don't want it to get in an emergency. What do you think about C-section? And at that point, I was like, get this baby out of me. Yes, let's do this. I'm in. And she's like, great. The epidural guy is on the floor. So within 15 minutes, I was in the OR getting my epidural. I didn't even feel the epidural. People talk about how it's painful. I was like, are you even sticking me with a needle right now? I don't know. So anyway, delivery, had a cesarean section. Baby was fine. I did fine, no problems. Thank goodness, right? Baby's healthy, mom's healthy. I got sick from the medicine, which is common from a lot of people. This is the weird thing. 2 days later, one of the nurses in the OR came and came to check on me. And she's like, oh, how you doing? How's your baby? And I was like, he's great. He's eating, feeding, normal, healthy baby. And she's like, and she had all these residents with her. She had all these little young doctors with her. And she's like, well, we're just coming to make sure. She said, we are actually sending your placenta to Johns Hopkins Hospital. And I was like, what? Why? They were like, you had such a large calcification on your placenta. We have never seen one so big and so hard. And I'm like, what? You know, and normally placenta can start to calcify when you hit past 40 weeks. I gave birth literally on my 39th week, so I was a week ahead. And they were like, it's a miracle that your son was getting enough oxygen. You know, like there could have been so many problems they were telling me. And I was like, no, he seems to be okay, you know, and they sent my placenta away because of the calcification on it. So I never really followed up. I mean, I was less than 24 or, you know, less than 48 hours post-birth. So, you know, I was everywhere. I wasn't thinking about, I got a C-section, I got to feed the baby, you know, all the things. So
go through the motions of all the new things that you've got to do.
Yeah, that's the last thing I'm thinking about. So yeah, that was the weird thing, is a very, very slow labor, but I did bleed a lot. I had to have an emergency C-section. And then that weird thing with the calcification, if it had been now, I would have said, well, let me see it. Like, what is going on? I want to know what this is. They were just like, no, we're just sending it up to put in the archives for them to study. So my placenta is somewhere up at Johns Hopkins Hospital, apparently.
Would it still be there?
I have no idea. I honestly doubt it. Because I was healthy, because baby was healthy, there was no follow-up with it, you know?
That was your priority at the end of the day.
Exactly. I will tell you that my C-section scar split open 10 days postpartum.
Oh, gosh.
Luckily, I did not get an infection, but I was in the shower and I just saw blood everywhere. And I was like, oh my God, what's happening? And in the middle, and you know, that's the whole, you know, the scarring and the soft skin and things like that. My C-section scar did open up 10 days postpartum.
And it's interesting because I'm in a Facebook group and somebody posted in there the other day about the fact that she's thinking about having a baby and sort of what people's experience is. And like I said to her, everyone's experience is going to be different. You know, this is an EDS group and everybody's experience is going to be different. But when you were talking, it just took me right back to when I had my son, which is 20 years ago now. But I still remember, I don't think you ever forget.
No, not at all.
Specifically the labor, but with me and my pregnancy, the first 3 months I had all the morning sickness, etc., and like you, the second trimester wasn't too bad, but the third trimester for me, oh, my hips, the pain I had in my hips was horrible, and my GP even said to me, because of the joints, it's more than likely, I mean, at this time I wasn't diagnosed, but we knew something was going on. And he said, because of all of the things that you've been going through with your body, it's more than likely that your pain is sort of 10 times what another woman would go through with the hips. It was really, really painful. And then labor, 72 hours I was having contractions. And in all that time, they kept telling me, oh, you're only 2 centimeters dilated. And I'm like, how can I still be 2 centimeters when I'm having contractions like minutes apart sometimes? It was, that was not easy. Labor really was not easy. Really didn't have to have an epidural or a C-section. So I'm really grateful for that.
You mentioned the hip thing. I know the day my son went head down, I was walking the dog and I literally took a step and that pain in your hips and in your sacrum and all that stuff stopped me in my tracks. And I was like, oh Lord, you know? And I felt like someone just had taken a sledgehammer to the front of my girl parts and my hips. Yeah. And I think I had a doctor's appointment and I was in a severe pain like you're mentioning. It was very bad. And I said, I swear he turned. And then like, oh, well, we'll see. And there he was, head down. Right. And I was like, I know the exact moment that happened because he was just, and he was I had a very big baby. Not very big, but bigger than average.
Okay. So that just added to all of it.
Yeah. His little foot was, I could see it. It was popping up in my rib cage all the way up, and towards the end, he would move around and literally just kick my ribs. You could see it, you know.
Well, thankfully, not every woman goes through the same experiences.
No, I don't. I was a miserable pregnant person, generally speaking. Did I want more children? Do I want more children? In theory, yes. In reality, no. And I told myself I wanted to have my first child before I was 30. And then I said, you know, my life circumstances didn't work out as well as I'd planned. And I said, if I'm going to have another one, I will not do it after I'm 35, just because the risks go up in general. And then receiving my diagnosis at 35, I'm done. It's just not in the cards for me. And I'm okay. That's okay. But, you know, it's so difficult. It's just for every woman trying to conceive or wanting to conceive that have these issues, it makes it that much harder.
Yeah, there's a lot to consider. I mean, like you, I wanted to have 2. I've just got the 1, and it got to a point where I hadn't had another one. But even having my son, the experience of not so much of the pregnancy, but of raising him, especially by myself, all the things that you know, just the bathing, the changing the nappies, we needed to bend down. You know, I wasn't able to carry him in a holder because it was too much pressure on my back. Things like that, when you're on crutches and you've got a push chair to push and a baby to carry around, it was a lot. And I didn't know, and especially as getting older, you've got even more to deal with on your body. And I just thought, could I go through that again? I had my son when I was 25. Then to be in my 30s maybe, where things in some ways have gotten worse, because my back definitely got worse after I had my son.
Yeah, mine too.
The thought of doing all of those things, it was like, wow, I don't know. I'd have to have an au pair, you know, and living nanny, you know.
Not to mention, like, physical aside, like, I can't afford another kid, period. Like, I cannot afford childcare.
There is that too.
He has wiped me clean. I'm good. So.
Yeah, I totally hear you. So how do you manage raising your child with all of the symptoms, all the things that you experience?
I have learned to give myself a little bit more grace and understanding. Again, I have only been diagnosed for 2 of the 7 years of his life. So a lot of my education and things have happened only in the last 2 years. The only thing I remember is in being an athlete and working and just, I'm a competitive person by nature, you know, it's work hard, work hard, work hard, work through the pain. On a Saturday, for example, when he was a toddler, I'd be on the couch all day. I just didn't have the energy. I was with him. He was well taken care of, no questions asked, but I would do the bare minimum, I wouldn't be out at the park or out running around. Like if I did not, and it's still to this day, if one of my weekend days is not rest, just straight up rest, I just cannot function anymore. Oh, you're being lazy. It's more about being kind to yourself. And now that I have proof, if you will, of these things that are happening to me, people still don't see it, but I know at least that I need to listen to my body 100%. I still feel bad. My son's father is in his life consistently now. I was essentially a 100% single mother for the first 4 years. I was up with him. I took 10 weeks of maternity leave, and he still was waking up every 3 hours. And when I went back to work, I talked to the doctor and I was like, what can I do? And I ended up doing cry it out because I just couldn't work and be up every 3 hours. Overnight, it just wasn't going to happen. He was a good sleeper after that, which is great, but it's just more about resting. I have also, oddly, the week before COVID hit and we went on lockdown here, I did get cleared through my job to work from home 1 day a week, which was huge for me, and I had to fight for that very much. And I still do all my work, my assignments, all the things, but resting. I mean, and that's not just sleeping. I feel like still, and I'm in a better place now, but I always feel like I'm living for bed. When I'm awake, I'm like, when can I rest? When can I lay down? When can I go to sleep? And then after I started resting, I realized it wasn't the sleep that I needed. It's just that stopping my body, letting my body rest and recuperate, and knowing that that is what it needs. I don't know if this is for you, but a lot of my joint pain and my body pain is better. Even my headaches, pressure actually helps. Pressure on that spot. My back hurts, just putting light pressure onto it kind of helps it. So when my son was little, I used to have him walk or lay on me or, on my back while I was laying down on the couch, and it felt so good. He's a little heavy now. He hit, a certain weight, and now it terrifies me. I can't even barely pick him up anymore. It hurts me so bad. But when it comes to parenting, it's just, you have to, and EDS and these things in general, you have to listen to your body, to advocate for yourself, and just to know that you know your body better than anyone else. You are not lazy. You are not entitled. You have symptoms. Trust yourself 100%, because no one else is going to advocate for you.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think for many years, especially before I got diagnosed, I used to push myself too hard. Like you, it's funny, just going way, way back to when you spoke about playing soccer. Football for me, that was my passion when I was a child. And because of the conditions, that wasn't an option anymore. But like you, I'm very competitive, like to push myself. And it's only really the past few years where I've put a stop to it.
Yeah.
I've had to, like you said, take care of myself and listen to my body. But when my son was younger, I'd be out taking him to football, street dance, on my crutches, in the freezing cold, just because there's that thing of, you don't want to feel lacking. You want to do the best you can for your child, and you can tend to overdo it and then have to deal with the consequences. But for me, it was very much that thing of being a good enough mum.
Yeah.
Making sure that he's not missing out because of my
disability. Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, one of the things where I live, medical cannabis has been a complete lifesaver for me. It is what I use to handle the anxiety, the depression that comes along with this. I always thought I had these mental health issues, but my mental health issues are because of my other things.
Exactly.
There's no chemical imbalance in my brain. I've had all the tests done, I've thyroid testing and, all the things that they go through. And cannabis has been truly the only thing. And oddly, that doctor that I'm seeing for hyperhidrosis has put me on synthetic cannabis, synthetic THC in pill form as well as part of my treatment. That's been a big help. And then again, you're thinking, well, I can't be high at work. I can't be high when my kid needs me, and I'm not. I put him to bed, and then that is what drives me. Like sometimes that's my only motivation to get through the night, to get through dinner. And I'm telling you, putting dishes in the dishwasher, oh man, that is one of the hardest things for me still. That bending for my back.
Yes.
And then throw the pot stuff in, bending over and doing laundry. I have to actually get myself down, sit on the floor because I can't bend over to move things anymore. Can't be on my knees because it hurts too much, so I sit there. And it's really about being mindful in all of those small moments. Slow down, not overexert yourself. Bodies are all twisty anyway, right? To make sure that you're not hyperextending anything, to keep your core stabilized and good posture as best as you can, and to just slow down and do those tasks. And that alone in the lifestyles that we all live today is very difficult.
And there's so much that we have to think about every minute of the day. There's no rest from it. There's no break. It's constant. But one of the things that I used to do when my son was younger, before we really knew what housework was, is I'd get him to do things like help me load the washing machine, you know, and make it a game. I made it kind of fun, you know, and then he got older and now it's a chore. But when he was little, and just things like tidying up his room, make it a game. And I found that it helped me, as well as teaching him life skills at the same time. It also helped me to get things done. I mean, to be honest, there were things that even if I didn't have these conditions that I would have got him to do anyway, got him to learn anyway, so that it's not too much for him to learn when he gets older. So things like, you know, I mean, not when he was really small, obviously, but things like knowing how to use a washing machine, putting the stuff, the clothes in the washing machine and sorting out your load. As he got a little bit old, late primary school, what was primary school for you guys?
Elementary school?
Your son's age, sort of 8, 9.
Kindergarten through 5th grade is elementary school for us.
Right, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So just doing little things like that. And he used to love getting up on a stool and washing up.
Yeah, I mean, I think naturally parents do try to do those things, and especially with little boys, making it, I mean, girls too. I don't want to say it's just boys, but that's what I know. You know, I have one and it's a boy. The game thing, absolutely. Cleaning up toys. Now the big one at 7, 8, put your dishes in the sink.
Yeah.
He's almost at the age where he's not going to break all the dishes trying to put them in the dishwasher. He does like to help me, but I don't really remember, because it was before my diagnosis. I don't think I've blocked it out, but it was just a grind. I was just the brain fog and the fatigue and working. I was just a zombie. And caffeine, I probably still drink close to 50 ounces of caffeine a day. I have to have a cup at 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon to make it through dinner. I know it's not good. I've started to drink more water and take salt and do those things. And I'm still, I try to shoot for between, my main goal is about 73 ounces of water a day. I'll usually hit, my goal is always to drink more water than caffeine. I don't drink sodas or anything like that. It is coffee, tea, water. That's it. But my coffee is my lifeline. It really is. Unhealthy as that may be, they want me to get off the caffeine, and I'm like, I can't. I will not be able to function. And I also can't take a week off work and be dying in bed going through all this withdrawal. That's another thing. I could never get off the medication properly or take things out of my diet where I would have withdrawal symptoms because I had a kid. I didn't have a day off ever. You know, you can't just lay in bed while your kid screams and needs a diaper change in the next room. They have to be fed all day, every day. That was one of my biggest hangups, making changes. I have made more gradual changes, but it has to be slow and on my own terms. And that's another thing, accepting that it's, you know, you're not going to have a perfect day every day, and that if you're not eating certain things, that's another thing I did for my Mcats is I got the food sensitivity test done. It's not about making 100% change. It's about being a little bit better every day. And as someone who's so competitive, I'm an all or nothing kind of person. I'm like, I'm either doing the sprint or I'm not, you know, I'm not going to halfway do the sprint. So it's just knowing that small changes, just being mindful of every little thing and making the right choice in that moment, that builds to make your life overall, your pain overall, and your mental health overall a lot better.
Yeah, I totally agree. And just like you said, being kind to yourself, even when you don't do the things that you say you're going to do. It's having that same empathy you would have for somebody else. It's having it for yourself. That same understanding, that same care. It's really, really important, and even more so when you're a parent. Because if you're beating yourself up, and I went through that stage of beating myself up because I felt like I wasn't doing enough or wasn't doing this right or whatever, and I would really beat myself up. But that wasn't helping my son, let alone helping me. That process is really important, to just be a little gentle with yourself.
Now you're bringing up the memories. When my son was about 3 or 4, so toddler, three-nager, we call him. Four was the worst year for me. I didn't have a terrible 2 kid. He was so sweet and everything. 4 was the worst for me. But I got to the point where I was finding myself lashing out at him, yelling at him, you know, not being able to control I got to a point where I was like, I feel like I'm going crazy between work and him, and I didn't have a diagnosis and my pain, and I ended up going on a mood stabilizer for about 2 years. It actually helped a lot. I'm 100% happy with it. But I had to accept and go seek more mental health care because I was losing it. I mean, there's no other words. I was just losing it. You know, he's a kid, he's a baby, he's a toddler. He wasn't doing anything wrong. And here I am yelling, and I'm like, oh God, you're yelling at you have to stop. This is not okay. So that, you know, that's the route that I took between 3 and 5 years old. And it helped me tremendously. And it was a short-term thing, and I'm no longer on it. It passed. This too shall pass. But that was a big factor for me when he was younger, the mental health aspects of it, because I really was just losing control of my own feelings and emotions all the time.
I can totally understand that. So have you explained any of what you're going through to your son? How do you communicate when you're having a bad day?
I haven't done a lot yet. He knows mommy's back hurts. He knows when mommy's head hurts. You know, he's heard me say that. I haven't really explained to him that I have a condition, so to speak. I don't know that he's quite there yet. He knows now when I say, mommy can't do that, you know, physically. He's just started playing soccer this year, and he loves it. And he wants to go outside and kick the ball around. God help me, when I kick a soccer ball, I can't walk for a week anymore. Which, mind you, losing soccer for me is still every day something that I struggle with. Okay. My whole life, my whole identity was taken away from me essentially because of this disease. And that's something that I cope with still a lot. So he understands when I say mommy's tired or I can't, can we do something else? I'm trying to get him to be understanding about that. I mean, that's the big thing is I just can't do all the things with him that I want to. It takes a village. I found my people, and I have a great group of friends who support me and who are understanding of what I have and believe me. You know, it's really that they believe that I am sick, whereas most people, you know, that you don't know or people at work don't. And they all have kids, and they know I'm a single mom, and I have one mom who was raised by a single mom, and she helps me. She takes Colin. My son's name is Colin. She takes him a lot from, not a lot, but, you know, if I call and I'm like, I know he needs a play date, or he needs something to do this weekend, she'll invite him over, you know, to sleep over with her son, who's his age.
Right.
So I really do go to them a lot. I don't wear out my welcome, but they are very understanding. And I'm so happy that I found a good support system around me to help me take care of my child. I mean, not take care of him, you know, his basic needs, but he's out on a hike today with them. You know, I'm not going hiking. I don't want to go. I can't hike. No. So it's people that I really found I have a good base group of friends that help me a lot.
And that is really important, having that support network, most definitely, for the both of you. Okay, so you spoke about coffee. It's one of your strategies that keep you going. Is there anything else?
Right now I'm working my way back up to exercising more, or at all, really. I am on my feet a lot, and I do walk a lot during work hours. But again, the athlete that I am, you know, I push my body to the limits all the time. Walking is not exercise to me. It is now, but it didn't used to be. And I actually worked with a very amazing physical therapist that understood EDS last year. And because of my athletic background, I already know how to do a lot of the exercises. I used to teach powerlifting as well. So I have a very good understanding of kinesiology in general. I found that her PT exercises help me, and I do them at home now. I'm thinking about doing Pilates, just trying to start moving in ways that work for my body. That is a goal of mine. But honestly, I am like, it is one day at a time. It is waking up. You don't know how you're going to feel on any given day. You have good days, you have bad days, and summer's horrible for me. I am completely intolerant to heat at this point in my life. I feel like I'm dying. I mean, I have no other way to put it. I have a lot of gastroparesis issues as well that have always gone undiagnosed. I had my gallbladder removed when I was 19 years old. My digestive issues can go back to when I was a child. And then my physical joint issues really was right after puberty when I was about 15. So I'm still in the process, you know, I'm still just trudging through every day right now and trying to get more diagnosis. So I think the biggest thing to being a parent is I don't want to die. I have never wanted to die. It's my last thing on my to-do list, but I am so anxious and overly focused on my mortality now because I'm thinking nothing can happen to me until my son is older, stable, healthy adult. Like, I can't imagine. So now, you know, in my 30s and all these things getting worse and worse and worse, my whole body subluxes all day, every day, you know, all the pops and the bangs. And it started to have ligament tearing, like fraying. I don't tear yet. They're fraying slowly. And I have, you know, I've had my shoulder freeze up on me, which was awful. And I'm like, what's going to happen in 10 years? I do not want to be 47. You know, these subluxations are going to, we know there's no cure for this. My body's going to just continue to deteriorate. So now my whole goal is to be as proactive as possible so that I'm not in a wheelchair, that I hopefully won't need crutches or need any assistance or aids to move when I'm in my mid 40s. I mean, that's young. I'm terrified of becoming immobile. I'm terrified of my son losing me. I'm not very religious, if that's okay to say, but I'm like, listen, God or whatever, whomever, whatever's up there, like, my son needs to be 25 before anything happens to me. Do I want to live past that? Absolutely. But let's make a deal. I'll do anything. Get him to 25, and you can do with me what you want, pretty much.
Yeah, I get you. I mean, the whole thing about the exercise and things like that. I used to exercise a lot, but I think I wasn't necessarily doing the right exercise. So it's something that I'm looking now about doing the right kind of exercise and correcting exercise as well. So I totally agree with you. And as we are getting older as well, I mean, I'm quite a few years older than you. But that whole thing of strengthening our muscles to protect our joints and the ligaments and all of that, I'm now understanding how important that is. So that's my focus at the moment, is really building up all around the joints so that hopefully there will be less subluxations as I get older rather than more.
This isn't parent related, but I like to talk about it because it's changed my life. Have you ever heard of anything called prolotherapy?
Prolo.
Okay, so I call it the poor man's stem cell. You know what stem cell treatment is, correct?
Yes.
You heard of stem cells? Yeah, they're very expensive.
Yeah.
So you have stem cells at the top, stem cell therapy, and then underneath that you have something called PRP, which is platelet enriched prolotherapy. And that's where they take your platelets out and do prolotherapy with your platelets. And then all the way at the bottom is something called prolotherapy. Now, it's been around since the 50s. Currently in the United States, it is not FDA approved. So no insurance, no matter how good your insurance is, no insurance covers it. It's all out of pocket. I got referred to a doctor from just a friend of mine, an athlete friend of mine, who's here, literally in my hometown, well, in Annapolis, Maryland, very small city. And I was like, oh, whatever. You know, I've been to all the doctors. He is actually the one that suggested EDS to me, that got me on my EDS diagnosis. It was him. All prolotherapy is dextrose. It's sugar, literal sugar. I have paid over $25,000 in the past 2 years to get sugar injected into my joints.
Oh.
How it works is a lot of people with arthritis and RA, you know, a lot of those other diseases have used this. So far, I've gotten my left foot and ankle, my left knee, my right shoulder, my L spine, and my C spine done. It's just needles, big needles that go into the joint, and then it injects the sugar. And so what happens with arthritis and joint instability is it happens so slowly over time that your body does not recognize that it is injured, okay? Because it's just so slowly. So you inject this sugar, which is an irritant to your body. You inject it into the facet joint, and it essentially just pisses off your joint so badly, like a traumatic injury would, that your body goes, hey, I need to heal it, okay? And it has changed my life. For example, I was getting swelling and Baker cysts. I had medial and lateral tears on both sides of my meniscus. In my left knee, I had like 0.5 millimeters of cartilage left, which is basically none. I did everything from cortisone shots, had the fluid drained from it. I did physical therapy. I did all the things and nothing worked. I did this prolotherapy, and about a month ago, it was my 1 year anniversary from it. My meniscus has completely healed itself. I have not had a Baker cyst since. I have no swelling. The crunchy sounds are all gone, and I have regrown 4 millimeters of cartilage in my knee.
Wow.
Yes. And in my shoulder, I went to get up out of bed a couple years ago. My whole shoulder locked on me. I mean, that was so painful. And I went to the hospital, and they were like, there's nothing wrong. It's not dislocated. Go get an MRI. You know, my MRI was unremarkable, blah, blah, blah. Go to this guy, and he does it with ultrasound. And he's like, your labrum is partially torn. It's not going to show up because it's very small, but that doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. And my AC joint is just for shit. And I have full range of motion in my shoulder. I have no popping, no cracking. Still, to this day, full range of motion with no pain in my shoulder. And then once he did my C-spine, he also did my occipital. And I have not had a migraine since July of last year, since he's done that. So I am the spokesperson for prolotherapy. You can do your own research on it. Some people I've seen in these groups, in Facebook groups and things, say it did nothing for them, but it literally has changed my life. I have very good insurance here. I work for the government, so I have like top of the line insurance, which I know is so different from you guys over there. But yeah, I have what's called a flexible spending account. So I get a card with a certain amount of, it's almost $3,000 on it at the beginning of our fiscal year, which is July 1st. And they take pre-tax money out of each paycheck throughout the rest of the year. So they take like $105 pre-tax per paycheck. It's gone. I don't see it. It's already taken out like other taxes.
Really interesting. It's definitely something I'm going to look into.
I hope so. And I know I ramble about it. And if you ever see me on those groups, I'm always that like, try Prolo, because my body pain has reduced 80% in the last 2 years. Not the tiredness, everything still moves around all the time, but overall, I have about an 80 to 90% success of taking pain completely away from specific joints.
Fantastic, that is. It's brilliant. I'll definitely be looking into that one.
Yeah, and feel free to message me and ask me any questions.
If you can find something that helps to reduce the pain, reduce some of the symptoms, then it's really worth looking into and giving it a go.
Yeah, I mean, right now, my body pain is the best it's ever been. It's almost, if it's not one thing, it's the other. Now it's the POTS and the MCAS that's flaring. That is just, it's awful. It's awful for everyone. I want to hug everyone that says I have EDS, I have POTS, I have MCAS. I'm like, I'm so sorry. Like,
fun never stops, does it?
It sucks so bad. I don't wish this on anyone ever. And it's a 50% chance that our children have it. Yeah. So now I've mentioned it to my pediatrician. He kind of knows what it is, but I have a pretty cool pediatrician. I picked him for a reason. So we're monitoring a little bit. My son, his body moves around. I hear his bones cracking and I'm like, oh God, And he's like, oh, my back cracked. But he also hears me say my back hurts all the time. When they're little, they're going to emulate you.
Yeah, of course.
He's got some hypermobility that's noticeable in his elbows. When they're that little too, though, they're still developing. Kids are bendy anyway. Yeah. They bounce back when they're young. So we're just keeping an eye on it. But if I can do anything to learn and to be an advocate in case he has it, there's a 50% chance he will. I'm worried about that too. We don't want to see our children in pain and struggling.
Yeah. The worst. I mean, I know that my son is hypermobile, but thankfully he has no other, no symptoms. He doesn't have any pain from it, but he can just do really weird things with his elbows.
Yeah.
But the worst thing as a parent is if your child develops the same condition that you've got, or any condition, but when you've got it, know what it's like to have it, for your child then to have it, it must be heartbreaking.
Absolutely.
To me, it just sounds like you're doing a great job.
Really Thank you. I appreciate you. One day at a time. Yeah. It's what am I going to do to get through today? Or what do I need? How do I need to treat myself mentally, emotionally, physically to get through the day the best that I can? If I know we have something coming up, I'll rest. COVID actually was fantastic for me. I hate to say that, but working from home, usually about this time of day, after lunch, if I lay down for 45 minutes to an hour, I'm a completely different person with my pain for the remainder of that day. And it doesn't build up to the point where I'm completely dying. Taking rest periods is definitely worth it. And I don't care if anyone thinks it's lazy or whatever. I'm like, screw you. Bye. You have no idea. See you later. I try not to take offense to it because I'm like, you don't know. No one understands this except for the people that have it. Not even doctors. They don't understand it.
We have to develop a bit of a thick skin, don't we?
Yeah.
So that we can get through all of the stares and the judgment and all the rest of it, and the people who don't understand, let it just run off of our backs.
Especially at work. I mean, it was so hard for me to get clearance. I went through HR, my director, and it was a very difficult time. And I fought and finally got some diagnosis on paper because that's what they want to see.
Yes.
And I said, if I came to you and said I had cancer, you guys would be praying and taking money for me. And not that I want cancer, and I'm not comparing it to that. Please, don't think that. But something that's prevalent, or if I had a heart attack, or if I had diabetes very badly and I had to be hospitalized, they would be there. They'd be raising money or giving sick time to you or however that works. And they just see you and they're like, oh, you're young, you're healthy, da-da-da-da. For me, I'm mourning the loss of my body. I'm losing muscle. Women, we get older, any metabolism slows down. And I used to be fit and I can't even go out and exercise anymore. I can't even use that as a relief anymore, the way a lot of people do.
But then amongst all of that, I remember us talking before and you said that you run a summer camp.
Well, I do more than that, but yes. I actually have a very big job. My official title is Recreation Division Chief. I work for the city where I live, City of Annapolis. So my job essentially is I oversee all the recreation for our entire department. That includes athletic, health and fitness, aquatic, childcare, summer camp. We have a second site, a second community center that I oversee. My primary roles as Recreation Division Chief, I run all of the childcare within the city. So we do before and after care in 7 different elementary schools. And then I am basically in charge of all the summer camps. We usually see about 2,000 kids a summer. So yeah, I mean, childcare in general, the licensing, the standards, it's children's lives. So it's very strict. I have about 100 people that report to me directly. So it's very stressful. I am considering making a career change, hopefully here in the next couple of years, not because I don't love it. I do. It's very taxing on me emotionally and physically. Now that my medical issues have gotten worse, I'm learning what's better for me and what's not, So now I kind of have to go that route and I have to take care of me. I have to worry about me before my job.
And if you're good, your son's good.
100%. And that's hard as a mom or as a parent. I don't want to say it's not hard for fathers. You have to be the best version of yourself to be a good mom. You put your face mask on the airplane before you put theirs on.
Yeah.
That's that way for a reason.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that I had to learn, rather than sort of pushing myself too much, going too far above and beyond to try and compensate because he's got this mum who's got this pain and tired and blah, blah, blah. I had to really start to think, if I'm not good, he's not going to be good. So I had to learn to not necessarily put myself before him, but make sure that I was very high on the list of priorities so that I could be the best mum that I could be.
Absolutely. And that goes hand in hand with listen to your body and don't beat yourself up when you need to stop or slow down. Because if you go, you'll be out for a week. Whereas if you took 20 minutes out every day to relax or to do the things that help you, you won't get to the point of having to be in bed for a week, hopefully.
Right.
Sometimes
it makes no difference whatsoever.
No.
So any parenting stories that may be connected to your conditions?
My son walking on my back or laying on my hip. I'd be on the couch every day. I mean, this is when he was 3 or 4. He couldn't have been more than 30, 35 pounds. I have problems with my SI joint and things. And I'd lay on the couch a certain way and I'd be like, okay, come here, bud. It's time. And he would come, okay, mama, run up and he'd sit. He'd put all his weight on this one spot. And I'd be like, okay, down a little, up a little, left a little. Like, that's how he learned his left and right, was me talking about it.
Oh, that's brilliant.
He was so helpful. I mean, the pressure, he would basically massage me or, walk on my back and I'd be like, don't go too hot. I had a certain spot, my ribs or whatever, but he would even walk down my legs. I had this regional calf pain for 4 years that took me forever to figure out. It was a game to him. And, it was really tough when he got too big. He understands more now that he's too big and he's just getting to be a big boy. But that is how I dealt with my pain in the evenings. We'd eat dinner and then mommy would have to lay on the couch. We'd watch a movie or he'd have a book or whatever we were doing. And it'd always be time for Colin to help mama. He'd help massage me or, he'd help mommy's back by sitting on my hip a certain way or whatever it may be.
Oh, I think that's brilliant.
It helped until it started to hurt. And then I was like, okay, we don't need to do this anymore. For parents, I'm not going to lie, it sucks a lot of the time. It's just getting as much information as you can and learning the most you can about your body and what works for it. It's trial and error. You are going to fail more than you succeed. Knowing that expectation going into it helps. But I'm not going to lie. I mean, some days I wake up and I don't want to move. I can barely move, Every day I wake up and I can barely move. I'm like the Tin Man.
Yeah, it takes a while for your body to get going, doesn't it?
Absolutely. But you learn patterns.
Yeah.
You definitely learn your patterns in yourself. And I mean, that translates into parenting. And again, like you said, there's a learning curve, but knowing that you have to prioritize your needs to be the best version of you for your child.
Yeah.
I really think that's the baseline of it all. And that it's okay. You're doing the best you can. And just like how they say, you read things, you're guilty after you yell at your kid, or if you lose your cool with your kid and you're like, what I'm trying to teach my son, the most important thing for me to teach my son is kindness and knowing that it's okay to be angry, learning how to control his feelings, knowing that everyone feels anger. Everyone feels sadness. Mommy's going to have a bad day and I can apologize if something comes up, but for him to be self-aware with his feelings like that, I think that's the most important thing that I try to get through to him every day, especially living with this, is that guess what? Today was a bad day. Tomorrow's going to be better. The world doesn't end when you have a bad day. You might want it to, and that's okay. You can feel that way, but you have to have a better, broader, long-range thinking plan, well, especially with this disease, to keep your mental health stronger, as strong as it can be.
I think those are great things that you're teaching your son, really important life lessons and tools and skills to have as he gets older. Really, really important. So I think you're doing a great job.
Well, thank you. I think you're doing a great job too. I want to be sitting on clouds with hugs where no one's in pain. My heartstrings go out, and and I see these people posting on things, and I sit there and I think, gosh, so many people have it worse than me. They really do. The people that can't eat and that need feeding tubes, that are in wheelchairs, and I'm terrified that it's going to happen to me. But at the same time, I fight to be proactive about it. And I've gotten to the point where I have any problem telling off a doctor, especially here. You work for me.
Yeah. My
insurance pays for you. I am paying out of my pocket today. You are working for me. It is not the other way around.
Yeah.
And you have to understand too that even without this, like, every doctor is not going to be the right fit for you. You have to build your team. You have to build your village. 99 out of 100 doctors are going to suck, and they're not going to be the right fit. And you have to advocate for yourself every day.
Most definitely, which takes a lot of energy as well.
Well, that too. And I go through periods where it's like I load up my doctor's appointments and then I need to take a break, because you burn out from that. You really do. So not only are you burnt out from work, but you're burnt out from being a parent. Again, if we had some disease that was common, people wouldn't think twice about helping us or being kinder to us or being more empathetic towards us.
Yes.
What I hope is that in the future, we make people more aware. I am very much an advocate for EDS of all kinds and all the comorbidities that go along with it, to raise awareness, to make it acceptable almost. It's almost like it's unacceptable. What we have is unacceptable, and people think you're lying, and people think that, I go to the doctor so much, I'm not going to be there for my kid. And it's like, no, it's actually the opposite. This is for me to be my best self so I can be the best mom and make sure my son knows that I tried my best every day.
Yeah, which
all
is
you can do, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's all we can do is our best. And from when we know that we're doing our best, then we need to be happy and content with that.
And I always try to tell everyone, I was like, nothing lasts forever, right? So even on the days you feel the worst, it will not last forever. Can it become more common? Yes. But there will be a day you'll wake up and you won't feel that as bad as you are. Or your mental health will be just a little bit better. Not even the bad things last forever.
Yeah, that's right. And it's about having hope, and that's really important, not losing that hope.
That's a big one. Yeah, not losing the hope, but it takes a lot of work to keep the hope, to finding those doctors and those things and those people that support you.
And even the hope that tomorrow might be a better day. Tomorrow I might not be so tired, or I might not have as much pain. Just in the day-to-day hope, we need to keep the hope alive. Otherwise, we would just give up.
Absolutely. And then, the second you give up is when everything's going to become worse.
Exactly.
That's what I try to keep. I'm like, it could be worse. If you don't do this, it's going to be worse. What do you want for yourself? Keep that big picture in mind, not the everyday. It's important to be mindful in every day, but you need the hopeful goal. My goal is to not be bedridden by the time I'm 50. That's my goal. And as horrible or good as that sounds, I'm going to do everything in my power to be as active and mobile as I can, as long as I possibly can.
Yeah. And Katie, those perspectives are what make you a warrior.
I know I talk a lot. I have a lot to say. It's years of going through it quiet, Yeah. It almost pours out of you. I am now an advocate. And it's funny that you use the word warrior, because with one of my mentor, he told me, we call ourselves warriors, and that's the difference between people and winners. And winners are warriors, 100%.
That's right.
I don't know that I know any other way to be. I have been blessed as a competitive from the womb. I have been this person. So I can't imagine not being this way. There is no other choice for me, because that's just how I am. That's how I am wired,
And from when we first connected on Facebook, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And I think it was a post that you put in a group that made me contact you, and the communication we've had since then, it's just like, yeah, this woman is a warrior and I have to have her. As soon as I decided I was doing a podcast, I was like, yep.
Oh, thank you.
Have her on my podcast.
I do have my days. I want to quit my job every day.
Yeah, and we do have our days, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. I think what's important is that we just acknowledge that we have those days.
Yep.
We don't stay there forever.
Don't stay there forever. That's the big one.
That's what's important. So, Katie, I'm going to ask you to finish this sentence for me. I am a chronic warrior because...
I am a chronic warrior because no matter what, I find a way. And I keep the hope of the big picture to be as well as I can, as long as I can.
I am so grateful for you coming on today. It's been so inspiring. It's provoked a lot of thought. I hope that our listeners, especially those who are maybe considering being a parent or who might be struggling, I hope that you've given them some food for thought and given them some hope as well.
Thank you. Because, it's nice to hear that some days. And thank you so much.
Okay, thanks. Bye.
You've been listening to the Chronic Warriors podcast. Please remember to like, subscribe, comment, and share this podcast.